This is Diego Cordovez.
Adam Schoenfeld.
Welcome to The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. And we've had two very entertaining episodes with Tony Dunst.
One more time.
He's a tremendous player, known as Bond 18 Online, stylish dresser, and very interesting guest.
Witty.
So if you missed parts 1 and 2, they're on Card Player TV, and we're going to roll into part 3. Now, when you're playing live, you're at one table, so you don't have the multi-table issue.
Right.
But you've got a very extroverted personality.
Yes, I do.
Even just from reading a little bit, it's clear that you require interaction with other players, banter.
I prefer it, that's for sure.
And did this ever affect your play? I mean, and I ask because for me it definitely would, because it's just not my natural persona. So if I was forced to talk the whole time, it would detract from my play. Other players are so comfortable with it that I don't think it does impact, and obviously it also gets them a lot of information about other players.
That's the point that I would make, because I would argue it's actually quite beneficial for me, because I've spent so much time in this industry now and on the table talking to people. They will give away what level of thinking they're on very quick, with the rare exception of guys who will throw you intentional curveballs, just mentally trying to level you. Those are pretty rare. It's often some young online guy who sees my suit, figures out, all right, I know who that guy is, but he has no idea who I am, so I'm going to play dumb. That's happened to me like a couple of times. For the most part, if you chat to people, they're probably bored on the table, and they're happy to have someone to talk to, and they're going to start talking about, very often I prefer to keep the conversation on that person, because they're going to tell me about, how much poker they play, what they play for a living, what they're studying. They will sometimes just get into talking strategy with me, which means they're breaking down how they think about poker, and I'm happy to just let them run. Plus, honestly, I really do want to talk on the table. I can't sit in silence around 9 people all day.
It's not purely to gain an advantage.
No.
Naturally, you also require a certain level of entertainment.
Absolutely.
If you ever watched Old Man D play, it's like the Grim Reaper. No, this isn't true. I mean, but now there are pluses and minuses, which we've discussed. And now I am much more like you, even though I'm really introverted. I project a personality just to protect myself. But I like to maintain a light gambling atmosphere, which I think is positive EV. And if I was to act like Diego, I feel like I'm making other people act more seriously, which is a detriment.
Which is not good.
I actually do believe that people probably play worse against really nice guys on the table, because they probably, I don't really want to push this very thin edge against, or heighten my aggression against this one guy. He seems pleasant. I'll take it out on everyone else.
Or I've been talking to this nice guy the whole day. How brutal if I show him if my bluff is exposed.
Exactly,
But also I think a lot of people are not used to it. So, and you are, so it's already part of your game. Someone who's not used to talking and concentrating and making decisions could really be thrown off their game, even though that's not necessarily their intention. It's one of the byproducts of it.
Again, you have to do what. It's a stylistic difference, which doesn't make you wrong or Tony or I.
No, it's just a preference.
Before I read about you, I thought that our colleague Jeff Schulman was the greatest swapper in history, but you're pretty good at swapping.
I'm the best swapper. I'm the best swapper in the world.
You're ahead on this, apparently.
Way ahead.
Jeff has probably grossed more than Tony, but he's also older in swaps. And also, Jeff's deep run at the main event screwed up his whole swapping EV because he.
See, I haven't had that yet. I haven't had to give back to anyone.
Until then, he was so far ahead.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Like the chickens came home to roost all of a sudden when he cashed for $2 million and he had to pay out.
So you're ahead just because you associate with excellent players, and you happen to have benefited. But
may have been hanging around at the right times when everyone's shaking hands.
But when you have a huge score, which I think will happen, you'll have a big smile when you pay out as well.
Absolutely, and the one person I'm going to be paying out the most is Mike Watson. I hit him for $83,000 off of a swap. He backs me in live poker, and I'm really hoping that one day I can turn some massive check over to him, and I'll insult him while I do it.
Right, of course.
The
key when you pay your swap partners is that you now have the moral high ground.
Yes.
And the ridicule can
ensue.
Oh yes, you got a few days there to really just lap it up.
It's a pleasure, as if you were performing some charity.
Right.
I usually throw the money at the ground and yell, "Pick it up!"
I mean, the great thing about swapping is, like, now you'll make Andrew Lichtenberger as if he's a railbird.
Yep.
That's the fun of swapping.
Absolutely.
Related to your own self-criticism about your poker and your own evolving understanding, you had a series, and I've forgotten the exact title of it.
Things that took me a while to learn.
Exactly. Yeah. Things that it took you a while to learn. I recommend it to anyone, because the ones that I read I thought were very thoughtful and very on target. But in a nutshell, just looking at them all together, kind of what are the general lessons that you would impart to someone who is going to go through the going to take the path that you've taken?
Well, there's imparting knowledge from a strategy sense and from a sort of trying to make poker your career sense.
More the latter, I mean. Because
okay.
That's where...
First and foremost, bankroll management. I mean, it really is so incredibly important. Guys have flushed careers by failing at bankroll management. I have been very fortunate in that I don't really have any wild swings to tell you about. I've been doing this for 7 years now, but I haven't had those, like there was once when I was very early on and I never built much of a bankroll where I lost almost all of it. By the time I got slightly above 5 figures, I just did not take the kind of risks that would ever compromise me that seriously. Although I don't have nearly as much money as I once did, it's not a result of going to the pit.
Club.
Yeah, going to the pit or
right.
donking it away in tournaments. I just kind of spent it on stuff. But I'm a really, really strong proponent of bankroll management, and that's one of the reasons I would have a live backer. I just do not have the kind of funds I think you need to accept the swings that are going to come with live poker variants. Additionally, I would say work ethic. A lot of guys see, okay, great, I can play poker for a living, I don't have to work. I would disagree very strongly. I would think not only do you, if you were going to take a guy who had never played before, and you'd say, how much work do I need to do to get good enough to make 6 figures? I would say you're going to need to throw away somewhere between, 18 months and 2 years of your life just working on this, 40, 50-hour weeks, studying and getting coaching and things like that. You're just going to have to throw away your life. And that's what so many, guys my age and younger than me did. We were probably video gamers or whatever else, and we just said, oh, here's the next progression of video games, but now there's money in line for it, and we don't, we weren't the kind of guys that really cared if we threw away our lives for a while. But I've never seen anybody get real good without putting in the hours.
Right. I think this is one big difference, too. People who generalize about the difference between the old school guys and the younger guys talk about, well, the younger guys are more analytical, maybe they're smarter or whatever, but the younger guys also have a work ethic away from the table that wasn't part of the culture, let's say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where it used to be just play, 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 and guys would say, yeah, you want to get better, just play more,
Yeah.
It was almost as if someone who, read a book or posted in a forum was almost ridiculed. Now, almost every young guy that I know, they're all over forums.
You'd kind of be ridiculed for not doing it,
yeah,
in
totally.
a regard.
They're exchanging views with other guys. They get coaching. Even some of the most regarded, highly regarded, famous players are getting coaching from other players. They watch videos, on and on. It's like a really intense effort away from the table, which wasn't part of the culture, like
it's
10 years ago.
It's the opposite, right?
And that's part of the work that is like the less glamorous part, because you feel like I want to be at the table making money, but if you don't put in the time away from the table, then you're really falling behind, it seems like.
Yeah.
You're a coach, you're on Poker Savvy,
yes, I am.
a site, and it's like everyone now is like on sites and so forth.
Yeah, at this point, occasionally the guys higher up at Savvy will say, well, do you know any really good MTT players who'd be interested in making videos that we could pick up? And I almost always have to say, no, sorry, because those guys get sought out. I mean, there's so much money in our industry now that was not there 10 years ago that people have realized if I want to get a proper hold on it, if I want to have my best chance at capitalizing on, we don't know what could be a temporary industry. We don't think so, and things are looking good for us from a legislative standpoint, but we never really know. So there's a certain desperation to it all. You're going to have to work your balls off unless you are an incredible natural talent, which unfortunately I'm not. Most guys aren't. And so we've got to put the hours in both on and off the film.
One last thing as we wrap up is that I read you've lived a number of places. You grew up in Wisconsin, but you've lived abroad overseas. Was that connected to poker, or how did those materialize? Because they seem pretty interesting. Where have you
Sure. Basically, what's happened to me over the last 5 years is I had never really planned on, traveling very much or living outside of the country. It was no intention of mine growing up, although I had those aspirations to kind of see the world. It wasn't some plan. And I went to the Aussie Millions at the age of 20 in 2005. I moved back to Australia about 6 months later. I lived there for a year before I was accidentally banned for 3 years because I overstayed my visa by 5 months.
Visas are
I overstayed my visa by 5 months.
They take it seriously there.
They really do, especially for that amount of time. I was actually going to school throughout that entire duration, but I'd still screwed up in the capacity of 5 months.
Australian accent.
A little bit here and there.
Were you motivated because there were great games there? and it was a nice place and like fun place to live, or what was the main driver?
Let's see. I moved there just because I really liked it, and I think at that point, I lived a fairly sheltered life in Wisconsin. I thought, oh, something new and interesting. I got to go chase it up some more. But I don't regret that in the slightest, because I honestly feel that Australia, might be the most livable country in the world. We can throw away the whole argument, what's the greatest country in the world? Don't worry about it. But most livable, you could make a very serious, legitimate argument for Australia. It's a beautiful country. And after I got kicked out of there, I came back and did my last semester of school in Milwaukee. I moved away to Shanghai, China for about 6 months. Went down to Malaysia for a while, came back here for the series.
There's not a big poker scene in Shanghai, I assume.
No, there is not.
Okay,
no, I was sitting in an apartment in the middle of nowhere getting coached online every day.
I thought I was well-traveled, and now Tony's shaming me.
No, very interesting. But, so that was more just for life experience.
I mean, honestly, none of it was ever really planned. It was kind of like, I moved to Shanghai with a young lady that was Australian that I attempted to re-immigrate to Australia with as my sponsor, and that was the only place we could live together without any trouble. The United States was not going to let her in, and Australia was not going to let me in. Whereas you drop, $20 in China and you can hang out as long as you want.
My kind of place.
Yeah.
Even if they don't let you play on the internet, you've got other benefits.
Turns out you can, in fact. Back then you could, except for party poker for some reason was the only one that was blocked. These days, I've heard they've tried to block more, but you can always get around.
You get a private server or something like
exactly.
that. We don't want to ruin any young Chinese, but there are ways. Tony, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
There's no doubt we're going to hear a lot more about you, not just in poker, but in terms of your revelations about the poker world and so forth. So good luck to you. A lot of fun. Thanks for joining us on The Scoop with my Full Tilt Poker.